So she ran down and got it and came back and she was like, I'm so glad you checked. And I was like, oh my God, the only reason he checked was to be passive aggressive.
Instacart order from hell. Nightmare blunt rotation.
Welcome to Read It and Screech, the podcast where I have endeavored in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put my readers out of humor with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it.
Homie, what?
Come sit with us while I give the Cliff's Notes and the cringiest quotes, and we go screeching all the way. I'm Grace, and this is my co-host, Ava. We would like to wish you a very, very Merry Screechmas. I ventured into holiday literature to find some festive and merry content, and I almost canceled Screechmas altogether due to a logistical problem that arose. Said problem being that apparently Christmas literature sucks so bad that even I didn't enjoy it, and I have no standards whatsoever.
Now, I thought it was because we were all sick.
No, I've been reading Christmas stuff and it was just bad. The holiday has been saved, I'm happy to tell you, by the century-old classic, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
No, thank you.
Yeah. It has 77 pages. The audiobook was 2 hours and 44 minutes. Narrated by Hugh Grant.
I'm sorry. Do you ever listen to yourself? You spent X amount of hours doing something and think, what goddamn motherfucking waste of time.
I do. For example, when I watched that Ruth Ducks TikTok video.
That was about a sad person, and that should make you feel bad. Same thing. I'm like, great. Every time you're like, oh, it was 7 hours. And I'm like, you wasted 7 hours of life.
Whenever I tell you the amount of time, like the length of an audiobook, rest assured, find comfort in the fact that I have never.
You should be like, it takes X amount of time and I'm filled with instant regret.
Because it doesn't take me, for example, this was 2 hours and 44 minutes. For me, it was an hour and 20 minutes.
That is not that much shorter.
An hour and 20 is exactly half of 2 hours and 40 minutes.
And that is time you will never get back.
It is not only narrated by Hugh Grant, but also a bazillion other people because it's public domain. So everyone in there could narrate this if they wanted to. It has 4.1 stars on Goodreads. It has 0.0 stars on Wet Hot Awful Reads, and a 5 out of 5 on Cold Frigid Bitch Reads, which is a new category. It's a category that we invented for Mr. Scrooge himself.
The only thing that matters is the wet diaper read, because fuck that shit.
No, this is 0-1 wet diaper reads. The setting is ye old timey London.
People gonna fuck in this book. Who read this out loud?
Hugh Grant.
He read fucking out loud.
What?
I said, are people fucking in this book?
And then he read fuck in A Christmas Carol, Eva?
I don't know, I'm asking.
I'm really happy that I get to be the one that answers that question for you.
I didn't know if it was like an adaptation.
It's not. It's the real one. I literally just said the author was Charles Dickens.
I thought you were tricking me.
No, I'm not. I'm really reading a Screechmas Carol, if you will.
I'm mildly disappointed. Why are we reading this? This is boring. I already know this story.
You don't? You think you do, but you don't, I promise. So excited.
Then my question was valid.
I know. It's just why I said I'm glad that I get to be the one that answers the question.
More people fucking.
So we have the three main-ish characters. We have Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, who is, to be honest, iconic goals as a person. We have his clerk, Bob Cratchit. It's giving an abundance of children that I have put no thought into whether I could afford them or not.
Ew.
And then we have the ghosties who are giving better help from the afterlife. We open on Mr. Scrooge. He's a bachelor. He's pretty old, working in his accounting firm that he established with his business partner who has since passed away. He is such a cold, frigid asshole that no one talks to him if they can help it. My first question there is, how did he build up clientele if nobody will speak to him? But whatever. Apparently, the vibe he gives off is so unsettling that service dogs will go out of their way to pull their owners out of the way so they don't have to make eye contact with him even with their blind eyes.
Okay.
It says, quote, no eye at all is better than an evil eye. And I cackled at that. That is what he wrote. So he spends Christmas Eve in his cold office counting his money, which is the job he's supposed to be doing. He has the one clerk who works for him who is in the adjoining room. Scrooge allows him a single piece of coal to warm himself at his desk.
Why would you bother?
Mr. Cratchit tries to warm himself at his desk with a comforter and one single candle. However, he fails at this, being a man of, quote, small imagination, unquote. So he's a dumbass. Is at this time that some fundraisers from the church come by to ask for money for a charity. And Scrooge says, why? My taxes already pay for prisons and workhouses. So after my taxes already pay for the workhouses, he goes out to get lunch on his lunch break. This is Christmas Eve. And he runs into his nephew. And his nephew is like, hey, good Merry Christmas. And that is the conception of the first bah humbug. And he says, Merry Christmas. And Scrooge says, bah humbug. And he says, why don't you come to my house tomorrow and celebrate Christmas? And Scrooge says, I don't want to spend Christmas with you and your weird off-putting wife. And the nephew says, oh, you should still come on by, despite the fact that my wife is weird and unsettling for you. And Scrooge says, no, I'm surrounded by idiots. I want nothing to do with it.
About her.
He doesn't specify. He just says, your wife is odd. I don't want to come spend Christmas with you guys. That's it. And then he goes about his business. So that's where the first bah humbug comes into place. He says it 3 times. He comes back from that lunch break with the interaction with his nephew. He shits on his clerk a little bit more, begrudgingly gives him exactly 1 day off that year, which is Christmas Day, and then goes home for the night. So he trudges home to enjoy his night in peace. Or to try to enjoy his night in peace. I have bad news for him. This is when he notices the creepiest fuck door knocker that looks like the face of his deceased former business partner. It looks like a bad lobster in a dark cellar.
That's what he normally looks like.
I would love some context behind that phrase, but we don't get any.
Okay.
It creeps him out pretty bad, but he says, coo-hoo.
This man looks like a bad crustacean.
In the dark.
That's what he looked like in life. This is what he looks like in death.
Right after this, he sees the vision of a hearse passing through the hallway.
What year is this?
1850.
So a horse-drawn hearse?
Yes. No, it was a hearse from the future. So he checks all around his room because he has a really creepy feeling now, but he doesn't see anything else yet. He eats gruel for dinner, which is the only truly haunting detail of this story.
No, you want to know what's fucking weird? Is
An old lobster in a dark basement.
No, these old men, and I guess there's old women that do it, but why are all of these old ass men, old as shit, 100 years old, hoarding their money for what? You're drop dead tomorrow. You ate gruel your whole life. What did you do with all the money? Who's it going to?
You sound exactly like the ghost of Christmas Future right now.
And I'm not saying I'm not doing the YOLO, spend every one of your dollars. But
no, you didn't even enjoy your fucking life.
Spend a certain amount of it. Spend $50 a day.
When they're reusing the same tissue.
Right.
Why?
And especially at that point. Because save it until what? You're 50 or 60 and then spend it or whatever. You literally, they'll find a dead old guy who is sitting on a couch that they rotted into, right? And then they'll move the body and there'll be money stacked in the couch and it'll be $3 million. Homie, the fuck?
Maybe.
And they're they ate 1 container of tuna for the last whole week that they died. Why?
Yes, they do that. Okay. Suddenly, all the bells in his house start ringing, his clock and his little servant's bell or whatever start ring-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and he hears the sound of chains tromping down the hallway. This is when the ghost of his former business partner, Jacob Marley...
Separation of church and state. Why are you in my house? Leave. The end.
This is when the ghost of Marley appears to him to chide him for his overall behavior. Scrooge notes that in life, everyone said that Marley had no bowels, and that now in death, he can see that was true.
Remember when everyone was complaining about Sarah J. Maas always writing watery bowels?
We see her inspo.
Fucking weird.
So he's chiding for him for his overall behavior and his general unpleasantness as a person. And Scrooge tries to change the subject and calls him an undigested bit of beef that is causing him to hallucinate. And an undigested bit of bad meat is now my favorite insult. Also, sir, you ate gruel. We saw what you ate all day, and you did not eat a single piece of beef.
Wait, when was the last time you even had beef?
When's the last time you splurged for some beef? Marley launches into this long monologue about how all these chains were made by all the greedy things that he did throughout his life, and that if you don't connect with people on Earth while you're alive, then you'll be doomed to wander the afterlife and be unable to connect with them. It's kind of hot the way he says it, but that's probably just because Hugh Grant has a hot voice, but whatever. Basically, Scrooge looks out the window. He can see all these ghosts of his old friends who've died, and they're all trying to help people, but they can't because they're ghosts now. Specifically, he sees an old friend who has one of those weird spirit chains trying to help a lady and an infant out of the freezing cold, but he can't because he's a ghost, so he's just screaming about it. Please note that Scrooge sees this and does not venture out to help the lady. Marley tells him about the other 3 ghost friends that are going to come visit him and then pieces out.
Arguably, if he cared about the friend and not even about the lady, he would have done something.
That was my whole thing, because he saw the friend and he was like, oh no, my poor friend. Like, go help them, and then the friend will feel better about, maybe he'll have one less little chain link or whatever to carry around. But no, he doesn't do that. He just stays and doesn't do anything. He wakes up suddenly and realizes he's slept for a full 24 hours. Promptly goes right back to bed.
Me too, man.
So the first ghost comes in. This is the ghost of Christmas Past. It's essentially a shiny Benjamin Button, an old man child.
Ew.
Immediately, Scrooge wants to snuff the spirit out, and I agree. Christmas Past takes him to his old childhood home and to see his old schoolhouse. Then they see his childhood self sitting alone in the corner because no one liked him even then. Why would you bring him here? What's wrong with you? He says, look at what a little loser you were. The next stop is him again, a little older, at that same schoolhouse. This time his little sister comes in to get him from school, so he doesn't have to spend Christmas alone. Said sister dies as a young mom, and apparently was the mom of the nephew that he shit on just this morning. They move along to a square dance where Scrooge sees that people are enjoying it even though they're not getting paid. The last stop on this origin story is to see his girlfriend break up with him because she thinks he loves his money more than he loves her. He says, I don't want to see this anymore, and tries to snuff the spirit out, but Benjamin Button is strong as fuck and holds him down and makes him watch how happy his ex is without him and listen to her and her husband talk shit about him.
No good.
He takes this opportunity to tell him that he's showing him things that actually happened. So he's like, no. See how they were talking shit about you? I didn't make that up. That happened. Scrooge is so offended about that he finally conjures up enough strength to snuff out the spirit, passes out, wakes up in bed again. This time, he says, I'm not going to get taken by surprise like I was when Benjamin Button showed up right beside the head of my bed. And so he opens up all the curtains on his bed so that it can't get the jump on him. But this time, this guy's different. And instead of creeping up to him in his bedroom, he just set up a whole party in the adjacent room. This is the ghost of Christmas Present. And this is basically Jason Momoa. Long hair, hot bod, bathrobe. He says, fuck it, let's get this over with. Just tell me what you're going to tell me. So Jason Momoa takes him down the fucking street to look at some fruit at the market. They're just watching the public go about their Christmas morning errands. And Scrooge notices that every so often, Jason Momoa sprinkles some of his flavor onto people and into their food. And when he does, their spirits lift and their moods improve. And he says, hey, what's that flavor that you're sprinkling on people's food? And he says, it's my personal flavor.
Ew.
So gross. The next stop is at his clerk's house. His family is happy and bustling around the house. Unfortunately, the clerk gets home with his crippled son, Tiny Tim. And I say unfortunately because from what we can gather, he has the personality of an empty tube of toilet paper. Tiny Tim says, I asked Dad to take me by the window of the church so that the whole congregation would look at me and see that I'm crippled.
Cool.
It's the weirdest shit ever. They bounce along the street looking at the various people celebrating, and the spirit continues to sprinkle his special seasoning around. They ended up at this rank-ass workhouse where children work in the mines, but they're happy despite their dismal existence. Scrooge rushes along past them because it's a huge fucking bummer. Next, they happen along to the coast and see a dingy lighthouse with 2 lighthouse keepers who are also content to celebrate the holiday despite their sad lives. Noted is the fact that London is a landlocked city, so probably they weren't lighthouse keepers but home healthcare workers. They finally end up at his nephew's house, and his nephew is also taking part in the popular hobby of the time, which was talking mad shit about Scrooge behind his back. Apparently one of the guests at the Christmas party was fat, and Scrooge makes a huge point to leer at her and watch her boyfriend chase her around to give her jewelry. He calls her the plump sister no less than 8 times. As they're playing Merry Peeping Tom, he notices that Jason Momoa has been aging very rapidly, so he says, what's up with that? And Jason Momoa says, under my robe, I'm really just 2 raccoons stacked on top of each other. Just kidding. But there are 2 weird-ass kids under there who are emaciated as fuck and representative of ignorance and want. Scrooge is horrified at the emaciated children and says, are there not resources for these fucking kids? To which Jason Momoa snaps back with, why? Your taxes already pay for their prisons and workhouses. The mic drops and disappears. So Scrooge is alone in a field in the middle of the fucking night when the knockoff Grim Reaper appears to lead him on his next journey. He keeps asking questions and the Reaper refuses to answer him. He just floats along, winding back through the city. People are talking shit about Scrooge all throughout town. So the spirit takes him to penetrate an area of town he's never been before.
I just want to know why it's anybody's business
To say the word penetrate.
to shit on him.
It's not. It's fucking not.
Why is it anybody's business what he does with his money? Why is it anybody's business to shit on him this hard?
It's not. So they penetrate the bad part of town and end up in a trap house. They're watching the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, all of whom have looted the fuck out of Scrooge's stuff after he died.
Good.
He's watching these people who looted his whole house and even like robbed the fucking curtains off of his own bed when he died.
England as a whole, whatever. They have like the grossest lore for shit like that. They'll be like, did you die? Let's steal the boots off the hanging dude. Like, they'll be like, he's dying? Rip the fillings out of his mouth. Like, fuck!
Yeah. So after they watch the looters, they zap back to his house and he sees his own dead body in his bed, but for some reason he doesn't recognize his own bedroom. And he's like, hey, who's that dead body? He's like, whoever it was they were talking about looting from is a poor guy. Wonder who that was. Then they go to his clerk's house to check in on their family. And they see the clerk wrapped up in that goddamn comforter still. And they hear the family talking about Tiny Tim's gravesite. I have to believe that Tiny Tim died of embarrassment from having to be carried around by his dad, who was wearing that fucking blanket all the time.
Oh, I would have assumed he died from the embarrassment of being paraded around in front of the church.
Finally, he asks the spirit to clarify who it was that was lying dead in his bedroom. Hey, spirit, who was that dead person in my bed wearing my bedclothes and my socks? Who was that? The spirit, who still refuses to speak to him, takes him to the graveyard to show him his headstone. Scrooge is understandably distressed and starts to grovel, saying that he's been changed by this intercourse. And he will celebrate Christmas if it saves him from this fate. He's screaming, crying, throwing up until he wakes up in his bed. Thankfully, it's actual Christmas Day now. So he has the opportunity to accost a young boy and bribe him to buy an enormous turkey to send to his clerk, Mr. Cratchit. I wish he would send him a coat so his son doesn't die of embarrassment, but I guess a turkey's okay. He runs into the men who were fundraising the day before and gives them a bunch of money, and then he just walks around town looking into people's windows, with voyeurism being a skill he perfected over the last 12 hours. He ends up at the party his nephew invited him to, amongst the weird wife and plump sister. The next morning, Clerk Cratchit comes in wearing that same damn blanket.
At least he's consistent.
Scrooge gives him a raise and some more coal to warm himself.
Oh my god.
And he tells him he's going to help his family out with their financial woes. He ends up being so close with the Cratchit family for the rest of his life.
So 2 days.
Plot twist. Scrooge is 30 and the life expectancy is 35. So he ends up being a second father to Tiny Tim, giving him a role model he can respect, in which he have to assume saves his life in the end.
Giving him a father he can respect, he can't respect his original dad?
Wearing that goddamn blanket and parading him around in front of the church. Scrooge becomes a well-loved member of the community and has no further intercourse with spirits.
You don't fuck anymore, Ghost?
It says he has no further intercourse with spirits and operates on the abstinence principle. Please explain yourself, Charles. If Christmas has one fan, it's Scrooge. And if Christmas has no fans, then Scrooge is dead. God blesses everyone.
Oh my god.
You probably could have read the book faster.
I did. I've read it. I have read it.
You've read the original?
Yes.
Well, then why are you asking me, does he fuck them?
Because I thought that you were reading a different one.
But then I said I wasn't. You still didn't believe me?
You said, but it's different.
You thought in this alternate universe that there was an adaptation of A Christmas Carol where they were all fucking and Hugh Grant narrated it?
I did, because you found some weird shit.
No, that's not what happened.
If it exists, I was pretty sure you would find it.
Who paid you to read A Christmas Carol?
Nobody paid me. Mom made us read it.
So goddamn lame.
We had to do this book club senior year. One of the requirements was you had to read at least 5 classics. That was one of the ones. And
So
I was like,
it was only 77 pages?
yeah.
Honestly, I just would have failed. I'm like, don't fucking fail me. I don't want to read 5 classics. You've seen what I like to read. So where are they now, Eva? If we didn't know that little after part, where are they now?
First off, he gave his weird money couch money to that fucking weird family. He bought an RV and went RVing all over Europe. And he married some weird yoga lady who sells beach glass wind chimes.
And they have a TikTok channel together?
No, he's not that forward thinking. He's still like a crotchety dude, but he has like accepted that like you must take life a little slower or whatever so that those fucking weirdos don't revisit him. So he gets up every morning and goes searching on the beach and he brings her beach glass.
So those fucking weirdos don't come
And
back.
when like young people come down, like the young yuppies from like the city come down and they're wearing like their suits or whatever, and he goes, "Take from me, man. I used to be one of those, I used to have all the money in the world and, you gotta take life slow." And they're like, "Yeah, sure, dude."
That is pretty much exactly what I was thinking, except for the possibility. Have you seen on Facebook the Dar Man skits? So I feel like in modern times he's Dar Man because he's got a lot of money and he thinks he has a message.
He's Gary Vee.
Yeah, but like he's like reverse Gary Vee.
Because he's, instead of being like, you gotta grind, you gotta get out there and grind, he's like, gotta spread that message.
Exactly. I thought this was gonna be a lot funnier than it was.
Why? Nothing about that was fucking funny.
Because of the seeing eye dog.
That was literally the worst book you could have. That was literally, first off, that's fucking the worst, most boring story. Number one.
Well, I'm also like, why is he so shit on for not celebrating Christmas? There's so many different religions around.
Right.
I have no issues with him. I was like, I wish he could just live his best life.
They literally wrote The Grinch. The Grinch don't like Christmas either.
These people are allowed to not like Christmas. And like literally the only problem I had with him as a person was, like you said, why are you like eating gruel when you have all that money? Like, at least enjoy yourself. And he's like, oh yeah, my girlfriend left me because she didn't like that I was rich. No, she probably didn't like that you used the same tissue for the 5 fucking days straight.
No, she probably didn't. That probably didn't even bother her. She probably didn't like that you were a goddamn asshole to her and tried to make her use washcloths instead of toilet paper, like people on, what's that fucking weird show on TLC?
Biggest cheapskates.
Because people will deal with a lot.
Whatever. Thank you for listening to Read It and Screech. If you'd like to support, you can always rate, review, and subscribe. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram. You will be sorely disappointed because we've not posted content there in about 2 fortnights. Eva has an entire colony of the relatives of the Mucinex man
What are those
living in her body. Phlegm City, a shanty town of phlegm inside your body. It's so bad.